All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And what's a new year, Martyn? Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you, Jake, and to everybody who's watching. It's great to be back. It's great to be in 2025, and as you start getting older, as I am, it's always great to celebrate a new year, mate, because you never know when it might be your last. So
mate, plenty more to come.
I'm sure there are. Yeah, well, let's hope so. Anyway, touch wood.
Yeah.
If this is wood, I'm not sure whether it is. But anyway, it's great to be here. Lots to talk about. You've been away for Christmas, I believe, in Europe, in Prague, was it? Vienna and Budapest.
Yeah.
You had a great time, I hope.
Yeah, no, it was awesome to get over to Europe, mate, and check it all out. Obviously, my first time being to all of those cities, and just looking at the architecture, it's like nothing we even have in Australia because our country is so young. So it's always a pleasure to go and check it all out. But plenty of nice meals, plenty of nice beers, and good to catch up with an old mate from Australia as well. So, how was your Christmas, mate? Did you?
Oh, much quieter. Family parties. And just relaxing at home, watching a couple of Christmas films and so on, and just generally just recharging the batteries, I think, Jake. So, as I say, it's great to be here. It's great to have come through everything, and we'll see. We'll be looking ahead, I think, today, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely,
2025. What does it hold?
And the years just keep rolling around so quickly, don't you?
They do.
Feels like we're starting last season.
They do, yeah.
And it also feels like it comes around so quickly, mate, because we have rugby league action quite early, don't we? We had some Boxing Day games take place.
3 games. Well, actually 2 games on Boxing Day and one at Bradford the previous weekend. And the main one, I suppose, was Leeds Rhinos and Wakefield Trinity, 18-16 to Leeds. Very competitive game, a crowd of more than 10,000 there. I didn't manage to get to it in the end. I'd hoped that I would do, but something else, stopped me from going. But Jake Connor scoring 2 tries on his, unofficial debut for Leeds, and we made him the game star for that game in the match report in League Express, and it looks promising for him.
Yeah, talk about a player rising to the occasion. He was the talk of the town in Leeds, and a bit of a questionable signing, I think, for a lot of Leeds fans.
And apparently on Boxing Day, some of the Leeds fans booed him when he came out onto the pitch, but I'm not sure that they were doing by the end of it.
Well, that's it. And he scored the first 2 tries, I believe, so he was quick to sort of silence the critics.
But
great to see. But it looks like sort of following that match, Brad Arthur has given out his squad numbers. They are going to go with Lachlan Miller as their primary fullback.
It looks like it, yeah.
And Connor looks like he's in the 18 jumper.
He's got number 18, but interestingly, Ash Handley's been given number 4, and Ryan Hall, the returning Ryan Hall, who will be the second oldest player in Super League this year, he's got number 5. I suspect, and we'd have to ask Brad Arthur this too, and I don't know whether even Brad Arthur knows the answer to this question yet, but I suspect that Connor will probably play in the centre inside Ryan Hall. And actually, when you think about it, that given Connor's passing ability and his ability to draw in a defence and lay off a ball for a winger, I think that could be quite an interesting combination for Leeds this year. Could lead to quite a lot of excitement. And, Ryan Hall, he's 37 now, but a very young 37, put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think there are lots of tries still in him.
That's right. And, him in a one-on-one situation, he's quite unstoppable, isn't he? He's such a force.
He would be if I were in front of him, that's for sure. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think he likes his chances. Any one-on-one situation he can get. I'm sure Connor can get him in plenty of those situations,
yes.
As you mentioned. But I guess looking at Wakefield, their first test back against a Super League opponent. Do you think Darryl Powell's quite happy with their performance?
Well, he said he was, and they could have very easily won the game. Leeds won it fairly late on, but there was one very interesting try-scoring name. I don't know if you noticed it, Dominic Sinfield, who scored a brilliant try. Actually, the try of the week, we made it for Wakefield, and amazingly enough, is no relation to Kevin Sinfield.
Yeah, wow.
It was, I've seen an interview with him where he insists that there's no link between him and Sir Kevin. what a great prospect that young man looks.
We'll have to go on the Ancestry.com maybe and see if we can trace it back to see.
You'd think there would be a link at some point in the distant past, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's
Share
right.
the same great-great-grandfather, perhaps.
Potentially. Who knows? Now, moving on, mate, we also had some other matches take place. So we had Batley defeating Dewsbury 36-16.
Yeah, the Roy Powell Trophy. Great to see the Roy Powell Trophy being played for. You won't remember Roy Powell, but Roy was a really great player who played for both clubs, I think, if I remember rightly, and played for Bradford, of course, and was a real stalwart, a front row or back row forward who was an absolute tackling machine. And he died at a very young age, in his mid-30s, and he's very fondly remembered by lots of players from lots of clubs. Actually, lots of people rather from lots of clubs. He was an absolute gentleman and great guy, and we lost him ridiculously early, really, and it's so sad for his family, but it was great to see members of his family and his kids and so on at Batley on Boxing Day presenting the trophy to the winners.
Yeah, it's great to see. We also had Bradford defeating Keighley 26-0. That was the week prior, I believe.
Yes, it was on the 22nd, yeah.
But it looks like, looking at the squads that they had there, Bradford, again, very strong heading into the season.
I think Bradford are the favourites to win the championship this year. I think they will win the championship grand final. I'm sticking my neck out, and I could be proved horribly wrong, and after Nam, of course. But I think Bradford have got a great chance of doing well this year, and that's going to be a big test for the grading system, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward. Do we have any rugby league action coming up in the next few weeks? I'm sure there'll be a few trial games set to get underway.
Lots of trial games. Quite a few testimonial games coming up for various players, but we'll keep a close watch on those in future editions of this podcast, I think, Jake. And, the clubs are starting to get into gear. What you're finding is most of the clubs are starting to declare their squad lists, their squad numbers. I mean, 9 Super League clubs out of the 12 have already released their squad numbers. I think 3 or 4 in the Championship have done so, and even a couple in the League One. So, we'll expect a lot more of them, doing that in the near future. And that will then give us the opportunity to analyse the squads a bit more, authoritatively, so to speak, when we know exactly which players are included in their squads.
And that's why these trials are so crucial. It gives coaches the opportunity to see their full squad, give a debut to some of the youngsters coming through, a few academy players, that sort of thing. So, which was also great to see in the match that took place over Boxing Day. In the second half there, it was almost a completely different side on the park from the first half teams.
Yeah,
I saw a few comments about Kearnan Palacia. Looks like he had a pretty impactful performance. So it'll be great to see what Leeds can put up this year, because they've got a squad. Some will say that they didn't, reach the heights they should have last season.
Well, this now is more or less Brad Arthur's squad, isn't it? Obviously, Brad came in the middle of last season, so he had to complete the season with a squad that he'd not put together. Well, obviously, this squad, it may not be entirely his squad, obviously, because a coach inherits players, and you never know how happy he is with the players he's got. But, he's signed players like Palacia. He's got, Makasivo on the wing, who's a hell of a... I mean, Leeds have got probably the 2 strongest wingers in terms of pure physical strength in Sivo and Ryan Hall. And if those 2 players can avoid injury this year, they're going to be a handful for anybody, aren't they?
It's going to be tough for any opposition halves or kickers. What side do they choose to kick to? They might just have to go straight down the middle to Lockie Miller, who's quite agile and fast. So.
Absolutely. But as I say, it's going to be interesting as well to see whether Jake Connor does have designs on that number 1 shirt, that fullback shirt, or whether he does play in the centre, or what Brad Arthur does with him. I really can't wait to find out.
Absolutely right, mate. Now, obviously, League Express published again. Was it the 30th of December? This edition,
30th of December. Yeah.
So we'll get into some of the things you wrote in your column, mate. You gave out a few Happy New Year's wishes to people in the rugby league
mainly
community.
to our readers, of course, and to the watchers of this podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but I guess IMG, did they get a card from you wishing them Happy New Year?
If they've got a report card, it would be if I were a headmaster, which would be quite an attractive thought. If I were a headmaster of rugby league, my report card for IMG would be could do better.
Yep.
Could do better, or you've got hidden talent. Let's see let's see it come to fruition. There are still quite a lot of people. I mean, it's funny. I don't think I've seen quite such a divisive issue as IMG in rugby league. A lot of people seem mystified as to what they are contributing to the game. Not very happy with the grading system, and yet there are still some people, particularly on our, readers forum on the Total RL website, who are still almost besotted with IMG and are convinced that eventually they'll come good, and I hope they will. I mean, I really do hope they will, because they've got a 12-year contract, haven't they? No break clauses, so I'm told, and no performance hurdles. Well, what a great contract to have, if you're in that position. But I've not seen any evidence yet that IMG have contributed strongly to the to the growing fortunes of rugby league. Hopefully 2025 will be the year when I can put a sock in it and finally say IMG have done a lot of good things.
Yeah. We look forward to that day,
well,
mate.
I know, I'm not sure it'll ever come. But the other interesting thing, Jake, that I read the other day, and I don't know whether this was a news item that came up when you were away, but Foxtel in Australia has been sold to DAZN. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I saw that.
The streaming company, which is based in the United Kingdom, and it's owned by, I think, the second wealthiest guy in this country, and it seems like DAZN is expanding its footprint across the world. And they made a very interesting comment that Foxtel in Australia broadcasts obviously the NRL. It obviously broadcasts the AFL as well, Aussie rules. And they were quoted as saying, Australia is probably the most sporting country in the world in terms of the people's keenness on watching sport on TV. And that made me wonder whether DAZN will actually be in the market for the Super League contract, because the next Super League contract, whoever it is with, will run from 2027. And the problem we've had in recent contracts is that Sky have been virtually the only bidder as far as we're aware. And it would be great to get a bit of competition. And I don't know whether DAZN would be interested in rugby league, but I can see that there's the potential there for it. And of course, if they do make a bid for rugby league, the main beneficiaries would be IMG, because part of their contract involves them getting a very significant proportion of any uplift in broadcasting contract that Super League earns.
Yeah, and it's not just like the rugby league. They've also got the rights to the NFL Game Pass, a lot of boxing bouts as well.
Absolutely.
So it tends to be, it looks like it's a growing platform, without doubt.
It's had its problems. It's not always been reliable, I'm told, by people who, a lot of people bought subscriptions for boxing and they've not always been happy with the quality of the product, but it's the future, isn't it? And there are lots of streaming services that potentially could bid for rugby league from 2027 if our people who run the game alongside AMG can make it appealing enough. And that's the problem. That's the thing that they don't seem capable of doing, and it's very frustrating.
And that's the thing, we've got a few years to try and improve that product and make it more attractive. And I just think about, say we take the NRL for example, from 2020 to 2022, 2023, the amount of growth and interest The crowd numbers skyrocketed as well.
Yes.
It is possible to improve your product in just a few years.
Yeah.
But in terms of streaming services, we're now seeing Netflix starting to, like they showed Christmas Day NFL games.
They did,
They had that Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul
which was a bit of a farce, really.
Yeah.
But it certainly attracted a big audience.
That's right. So it looks like they're trying to get into the sporting market as well, which is could be a potential option as well.
You've just got to position yourself so that you look attractive and that you're capable of generating more subscriptions, more bums on seats, basically. And as I say, we don't seem capable of doing that. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope we are. But I'd love to see the evidence.
No, definitely. And the more competitors we can get bidding for those rights. I
think playing the game in Las Vegas, Wigan and Warrington, may be a bit of a game changer. And that's, hopefully going to have a big impact on any future TV negotiations.
That's right, mate. Some of the other things you mentioned in your column, mate, we've got the League Express Men of the Year and Woman of the Year award. Who did you award?
Well, the Man of the
to?
Year was a simple choice, really, as far as I was concerned. Matty Pete, the Wigan coach, won every trophy that his team went in for. I mean, his team won the Team of the Year award at the Sports Review of the Year, BBC Sports Review of the Year event just before Christmas. Matty was in the running for Coach of the Year, but I think that was given to Keighley Hodgkinson's coach as the girl who was the gold medalist at the Olympics. But Matty, I mean, his team dominated in 2024, and they won convincingly everything they went in for. Maybe it wasn't that as convincing as all that against Penrith. That was the toughest game they had probably. But he's got the ability, it seems, to make his players reach a peak at just the right time. I've always been fascinated by that ability. How do you make your players? Because it's such a long season. How do you make your players reach a climax for the Challenge Cup final in June, and then for the grand final in October? But Matty seems to have got the ability to do that, and the only problem for him is that he's set himself such a high benchmark that you would think it would be difficult to keep doing what he does. And actually, it would be better for the game as a whole if some of the clubs do get a look in at some of the trophies, wouldn't it? Let's face it, we don't want one team to win all the trophies, as we saw with Wigan in the 80s and 90s. But he's been absolutely fantastic, and I've got no doubt that he was the Man of the Year in Rugby League this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Woman of the Year as well,
Tara
mate?
Jones, well, she's an amazing young woman. She's only 28, and she's an England international. You might have thought that she would be wanting to play for the England team against the Jillaroos in Las Vegas in a couple of months' time, but instead she's actually retired now from playing. She, by the way, was the first ever try scorer at Wembley in the Women's Challenge Cup final in 2023. So that's another little, record that she's got. But she's given all that up to become a full-time referee. She did referee a game in League One last year in 2024, and I think we will find her refereeing. She will become the first female referee to referee a Super League game this year, I predict, and I think she'll do a fantastic job. I think she's a very smart individual. She obviously loves rugby league and takes it very seriously, and I just hope it's going to be a really happy new year for her this year. And our best wishes to Tara for lots of success on the refereeing field in 2025, and one day she might even referee a Challenge Cup final and a grand final.
Yes.
And international matches. Who knows? The world's your oyster, isn't it?
No, that's right. Yeah, great to see, and well deserved to Tara.
Yeah.
We've also got the countdown for the Albert Goldthorpe Rookie of the Year award, mate. The list has been narrowed down to a few candidates, I believe. 6
candidates at the moment. Yeah. And 6 very. It's actually, we actually started. It was quite interesting, Jake. We actually started on X, the social media platform, and we listed 24 players in total in 6 groups of 4, based on clubs, and asked the readers to or the people who follow us on X to indicate which ones were their favoured nominees. And the ones it came down to Zach Eckersley of Wigan, Alfie Edgell of Leeds Rhinos, Leon Hayes of Warrington Wolves, Liam Horn of Castleford, Lewis Martyn of Hull FC, and Josh Rourke of London Broncos. And we'll name the Rookie of the Year in this coming week's League Express. It'll be one of those 6. At the moment, Jake, I'm not quite sure which one it's going to be, because we will pick who we think is the best player. We won't necessarily pick the one who comes first in that particular poll, but we'll certainly take note of it, and we may well pick the one who wins that poll, but we'll pick whoever we think the best player is.
And
it's difficult because they're all very good.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. We've got to have a bit of a debate about it and then choose the right player.
Yeah, it's great to see all of these young talents being unearthed.
Young players coming through. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yes, there were lots of good rookies in 2024, and long may that trend continue.
Yeah, that's right. And the more junior development we see in this country, the more elite academies we see. Coming in for clubs. Hopefully, the more talent we'll see. And
we just want somebody to find a way to generate more income for the game, so that we can pay these players actually what they're worth. That's the point. The danger for our sport is that we're generating so little money that potential players will go to other sports. I mean, interestingly enough, we had Jermaine McGilvery as a guest on this podcast a few weeks ago in December, and he's got 3 sons who all love rugby league, but who are all very good football players as well. And inevitably they're moving towards football rather than rugby league, simply because of the financial rewards that come from doing that. And I'd love to see that gap between what you can earn as a top footballer and what you can earn as a top rugby league player. And it's a massive gap at the moment, but I'd love to see it close a little.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Moving on, we had some sad news, mate. The passing of Frank Wilson.
Frank Wilson, yeah, you wouldn't know Frank, and he wouldn't mean much to you, but he was at one time when I was involved in student rugby. I got to know Frank quite well because he was very much involved in coaching the Wales students team and coaching, I think it was Manchester University or Manchester Polytechnic, whatever it was in those days, and he was a great guy, a real Welshman, great Welshman, one of those great black Welsh players who came north in the old days when rugby union was an amateur game, and black players tended not to be selected for Wales, They had lots of opportunities when they came north to play rugby league, so many of them did. And there was a very proud line of black Welsh players who came into our game, obviously including Billy Boston, Clive Sullivan, many, many more. And Frank was a really great winger for St Helens, for Workington, Warrington, Salford, and so on. Had quite a long career. And was one of those very, very elegant wingers who got great pace and could step off either foot and scored some great tries. And I was just very sorry to lose him, and my condolences to Frank's family and he's a very sad loss.
No, absolutely, mate. Always sad when we have to report on tragic passings.
Well, I'm afraid that's life, isn't it? You do, and we all go in the end, unfortunately.
That's it. It's inevitable. Yeah. We'll move on to some of our news items, mate, that have happened over the past week or two. Hull KR, they've snapped up Arthur Morgue from Catalans for 2026. Bit of a surprise to me, this one. I thought it was a great pickup.
If we're talking about long-term strategies, then Hull KR are implementing them, aren't they? Signing players for 2026 and already. great for them, and obviously Willie Peters sees a great talent in Arthur Morgue, and it'll be fascinating to see how that works out in the end. But Arthur Morgue has got to play a full season now for Catalans, knowing that it's his last season.
That's right. Now, it's like when you see signings happen this far in advance, or with a couple of years to go or a year to go, you always suspect is there going to be an early release, but...
Well, you never know, but I don't think Hull KR could fit him into their salary cap for this season. I think they're pretty near to the limit of their salary cap, and I don't think it's going to be possible for them to, sign anybody else, excuse me, for this season without releasing somebody. And I'm not quite sure who they'd release, so probably not an issue for them at the moment.
We also had some changes to the International Rugby League rankings following some of those matches we saw over the I guess October, November, December period. Tonga looks like they've leapfrogged Samoa into 4th spot in the International Rugby League rankings. Probably well deserved for Tonga.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Great to see for them, and I thought they were outstanding in the Pacific Cup this year. They were a bit disappointing when they toured this country in 2023, but they were far better in the Pacific Cup, and I think it's well deserved that they are up, in that 4th place behind Australia, New Zealand, and England.
And do you think with England beating Samoa 2-0, do you think they're overlooked in terms of their movement? They're still sitting 3rd, but do you think they should have been maybe promoted to 2nd with?
Well,
the
who
Kiwis
knows? I mean, I'm not quite sure what they have in mind when I'm not quite sure who actually puts together the rankings and what criteria they use when they make those decisions. But it's interesting. But at the end of the day, rankings are one thing, but it's performances on the field that everybody's really interested in.
That's right. Now, the NRL have officially handed down their penalties to Ezra Mam following that car crash incident he was involved with. So he's been handed a 9-match ban to start this season, and he's also been handed a $120,000 fine, which is about £60,000 roughly. Do you think this is a fair penalty to Ezra Mam?
I always feel ambivalent about the NRL or the RFL, for that matter, penalising players who have committed some sort of crime, let's say, which obviously reckless driving is, because the correct place to deal with that sort of thing is the courts. The courts impose a penalty, which they did in Ezra Mam's case. A lot of people said that was the penalty that was given to him was very light, far too light given the nature of the offence.
The court penalties?
The court penalty, yes. The court penalty didn't seem particularly harsh, we've got to say. But nonetheless, it's the court's job to issue penalties to people who have infringed the law, who've broken the law. And I'm never quite, it's okay when you then come back to your employer. If somebody, for example, who worked for me, had a crash and was then found to have been at fault in some way in terms of causing the crash, would I be entitled as an employer to actually say to them, I'm going to fine you as well for having done that? If I were your employer and you'd had a bump in your car, would I be able to say to you, right, Jake, I'm going to fine you another 10,000 quid for that? And obviously that would be ridiculous. So I'm not quite sure why the NRL or the RFL have got the power to go beyond what the court did and impose fines on players. I know exactly why they want to do it, of course, because they want to protect the image of rugby league, and they don't want incidents like this harming the image of rugby league. I understand it perfectly, but it, it's a potentially dangerous power to have.
That's right, and it's an interesting comparison you brought up there, mate. I'd be blowing up if you tried to fight me £10,000.
Of course you would. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's sort of the way with sporting organisations. I remember, I think in the NFL there was a big issue around the Patriots when Tom Brady was playing for them. They had this big Deflategate situation where the Patriots and Tom Brady were accused of deflating the balls a little bit for a Super Bowl, so Tom could have a better grip on the balls, allegedly. And I think it all went to court, and then the court sort of laughed it out of the courtroom, and then the NFL came in and said, well, we've wasted all this time in court, we're still going to give him a suspension, and there was a lot of uproar about that, so he got a 4 or 5 match suspension. But yeah, it's one of those weird things that we only really see with sports where the employer also takes action.
Absolutely. And of course, I'm not saying the NRL are doing anything that they're not entitled to do, because of course every player signs a contract that actually gives the NRL that right. So the NRL is not exceeding its powers. All I'm saying is that it's actually an interesting power to have, and sometimes you've got to be very careful that it's not exercised recklessly, and they don't put the so-called image of the game ahead of the players themselves.
What impacts do you think it'll have on the Broncos in terms of the start of their season?
Well, given that they've got Michael Maguire there, probably not that much, really. I think Michael Maguire will make sure that Ezra Mam, is taken under his wing, and they've got quite an experienced halfback combination, haven't they?
That's right.
At the Broncos.
There that can come and fill
Ben
the
Hunt
void.
and Adam Reynolds. So, they'll be okay, and I think the Broncos will show the benefit of Michael Maguire's coaching as the season gets underway. I think they'll be the fittest team probably. Well, I don't know, every team's fit in the NRL, aren't they? But they'll be a very fit team, put it that way.
Yeah, I hope so, mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate, so just another little news point. I saw Dom Young, he came out and admitted a switch to Union isn't on the cards. There was a lot of reports and speculation about him potentially moving across one day. He sort of shut down those rumours. Well, I hope he never
does, because I think he is a potential... We've said this before on the podcast about Dom Young. I think he is potentially a major star in our sport, and we've got to promote our major stars. We've got to... rugby league is a team game, but people, the sporting public do love individual sporting stars, even when they are members of a team. And we see that in football, don't we? And we see it in every other sport. We see it in, that's why, we see Luke Littler in darts has made such a massive impact. People love to see individuals performing at the highest level. And Dom Young's got a great personality, tremendous athlete. There's so many positive things about Dom Young. I would absolutely hate to see him following Joseph Suaalii's footsteps and going to rugby union.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Now, in League Express, we're down to the final 10 most memorable moments of 2024. The countdown was on, I think, was it the top 50 originally? And
top 50
we're
originally,
down to 10.
and we've now completed it. It's the thing we do every year in League Express. We like to put all the events of the year into some sort of order of significance. I mean, obviously, it's a subjective judgment, really. We can't, everybody would have, a different order. There's no doubt about it. But yes, we've got the final 10 here of the key events of the year. Do you want to go down them from 10 to 1?
Yeah, we can do that, mate.
Well, number 10. Tara Jones becoming the first full-time female referee. That's going to be highly significant, as we'll no doubt see in 2025. We've discussed Tara already. Number 9, Max Jowett's new points record. The first player in history to score 500 points in a season. How significant is that?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not even sure that the RFL has been able to capitalise on that. He broke Lewis Jones' record that had lasted since 1957, 496 points. Max has now taken it up to 500. playing for Wakefield in the Championship, I don't think that figure will ever be beaten, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. It's one of those ones when a new record gets set like that, we all have that debate: will it ever be beaten again?
Yeah, I can't see it. Number 8 was the Captain's Challenge getting the go-ahead for Super League this year. I think that's going to have a major effect on the game. Well, obviously it is. It's going to change the way the game proceeds on TV. It's I think it works well in the NRL, and let's hope it's going to work as well in Super League.
No, I agree. It's one of those ones now when teams, players will have the opportunity to correct a referee, because there's been heaps of controversial calls in the years past. So we'll see. Maybe
we can get Phil Bentham on this podcast to talk about how the referees will see it.
Yeah, that's right.
I wonder if they're as pleased as some other people are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think as a ref, though, if you're in the middle of the field and you've unknowingly called something the wrong way, you'd be pleased to be corrected on the field.
Yeah.
Just so you don't have that lingering over you for weeks to follow. So
yeah. Number 7 was Rob Burrow night at Headingley on the 21st of June, which was one of the, I think we describe it here as one of the most special nights, if not the most special night, in Headingley's very long history. You remember they played Leigh, and Leeds secured a convincing victory against Leigh on that night, and the Leeds players played out of their skins. It was an incredibly emotional night. Tributes to Rob. His father was there speaking to the crowd and to the audience, and it was such an emotional night, and a night that you'd never forget, and I'm sure nobody who was there or saw it on TV will ever forget it. And we'll mention Rob again in a moment, but yes, it was an amazing night, I thought.
And fitting, it's number 7 on the list too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'd not thought of that.
Yeah, really?
That's really interesting. Number 7. Yeah. That's yes, it is true. Yes, number 7.
The numerology there.
Yeah. Number 6, the decision to invite PNG to have a side in the NRL from 2028.
Yep. Yeah.
That massively significant for rugby league in PNG, but also for rugby league in the Southern Hemisphere and throughout the world, really. And not least for all those PNG players who are playing in Super League this year. It's really amazing, isn't it, that you look at the number of PNG players in Super League and it vastly exceeds the number in the NRL. And a lot of the guys in Super League, I'm sure, will be looking with one eye at that team when it gets, when it starts recruiting. And, a lot of clubs over here will struggle to retain their PNG players, I think.
And I think for me, I remember when the PNG Hunters were brought into the Queensland Cup, just the little glimmer of hope that they would give for young kids in PNG hoping to make their NRL dreams come true. I just think having a team in PNG, I think there's going to be a lot of young kids that now see that clear pathway to the NRL. So, great to see that.
Yeah. Number 5, David Hughes leaving London Broncos after probably more than 25 years, having probably invested about £25 million in the club, and it leaves the Broncos, at least for the time being, without a major financial backer. They're going to have to struggle along without David, and he left mainly because of disillusion, I think, with the grading system that saw his club relegated before it had kicked a ball in 2023. That was so frustrating for him, and it was, I think, for everybody. And, the question is, where does that leave rugby league in London? Hard to say, really.
That's right, yeah. A massive loss.
And I really hope, I take this opportunity to say to everybody involved with London Broncos, best of luck for the new year. And I hope that you are a very competitive championship club this year, that you recruit well, and that you're able to, get the fans in and get some great wins at the Cherry Red Records Stadium in Wimbledon.
And I think a lot of fans who did watch London Broncos play in Super League last year, they'll continue watching them and following their story, because they really were everyone's second favourite team in 2024, I think, the Broncos. So, let's hope they have a successful campaign in the championship this year.
Well, I certainly hope so, because, they are a team that I actually really enjoyed watching them for the most part in 2024. And I hope, the trouble is there's no TV contract for the championship, and that's really frustrating. But I'd love to see more of the Broncos. But number 4 we get to, and that's the 2026 World Cup going to Australia and Papua New Guinea, which was announced in July, and finally confirmed that the World Cup will be held 4 years after the last one, and that this time there will only be 10 teams in it as opposed to 16 teams. I think that's a mistake to go down to 10. I think once you've gone up to 16, you ought to keep it at 16 if you possibly can, even if it means you seed the playing groups so that the very best teams don't come up against the very weaker sides. So I'd prefer to see 16 teams, but at least the World Cup will be held in 2026 in Australia and PNG.
Especially after all that uncertainty. It's great to have it locked in, that's for sure.
Yeah. Number 3, we've simply headlined it Wigan's Crowning Glory. We were actually, and I'll tell you now, when we were putting this together, we actually made number 3 Wigan winning the World Club Challenge against Penrith, which was... We actually got the scoreline wrong, 16-12. We said 13-12. We're confusing it with the Saints one, actually. It's a bad mistake to make. So, but we had that as, a major significant event. But then on the 17th of December, when we'd already, prepared this, Wigan were awarded the Team of the Year award at the BBC Sports Review of the Year show. So we, collapsed two things into one and called it Wigan's Crowning Glory, which it is. I mean, it's been we could have had, loads of Wigan features in this top 50 moments of the year. And it's just been a great year for them, hasn't it?
That's right. They've certainly got a full trophy cabinet at the moment. And I'm sure they'll be looking to add to that this season.
Then number 2, the saddest event of the year, really, although not necessarily the most unexpected, was the death of Rob Burrow, which, it sort of, when that email came through confirming that Rob had died in Pinderfields Hospital in Wakefield, it was very upsetting, very emotional, very much similar feeling, actually, to when the original email came through on the 19th of December 2019, saying that he was suffering from motor neurone disease, which was, I remember reading that back then and, having to sort of sit down and compose myself because it was such a shock piece of news. And from that moment onwards, his eventual death from motor neurone disease was inevitable, I suppose, but it was a terribly sad day when it occurred on the 2nd of June. Yeah,
absolutely right, mate. I think it the whole rugby league community worldwide had a similar reaction. And
not just the rugby league community, to be fair. Lots of other sporting people, or non-sporting people, were, totally in admiration of Rob and his family and so on, and they handled it with such dignity and calmness, and there were various TV programs about him that you could only cry if you watched them, really, to be honest, Jake. And it was a very emotional time. And of course, Kevin Sinfield is continuing to undertake those incredible challenges that he's putting himself through to raise money for the M&D community, and they've now generated sufficient funds to build the Rob Burrow Centre for Motor Neurone Disease in Leeds, which is an incredible achievement. And, I'm sure all the people who have suffered from that disease and who will suffer from it in the future will be very grateful to Rob's memory for, that centre being constructed.
What a legacy.
Incredible, yes, absolutely incredible guy, and what a shame to lose him. Then the number one thing was Rugby League's debut in Las Vegas, and that was on the 2nd of March last year, wasn't it? We're going back to Las Vegas on the 1st of March this year, and the reason why it's so significant is because it's expanding. There will be 4 matches in in the Allegiant Stadium next year, or this year rather, with Wigan and Warrington kicking it off. And that could be so significant for rugby league in this country and for Super League, as we've already said, as well as women's rugby league, of course, because the England women's team will play the Gillaroos before there are 2 NRL games to round off the day. 4 games all on one day. So it's going to be an incredible day's rugby league action, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm jealous. I've spoken to a few people over here that are going over, and they're as excited as I am, but I'm not going. So I've been to Vegas before, and I think it's so much fun by itself. You mix in a few rugby league matches as well, mate.
Absolutely.
It's a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's no denying. I think they did a great job last year with the fan zones and all these little events they had around it as well. So it's going to be a great experience for all fans.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Hopefully they'll get... I mean, they got more than 40,000 last year.
Yep.
I think they're hoping for at least 50,000 this year. I think I read somewhere they'd already sold 30,000 tickets.
Wow.
I don't know if that's absolutely true, but so let's hope that the clubs that are going this year take lots of fans with them. I'm sure Warrington and Wigan will probably take 5,000 or 6,000 fans between them, I would think.
No, definitely. Now, mate. We also had a poll in the paper a couple of weeks ago looking at what fans over here would like to see in 2025. There was some great options to pick from. I guess we'll touch on those results here before we wrap it up.
Let's see what the fans said. We gave them, I think, 5 potential things that they might like to see. The winning option, the thing they'd most like to see, is the thing that you'd probably least like to see, which is England winning the Ashes against Australia next year. If I think you'll be back home by then, won't you, in Australia?
Yeah.
So
then
if England do win, I'll be straight on the line to you.
Well, that was a
25.72, over 25%. The next most popular thing was the RFL to announce the expansion of Super League to 14 teams, which got 22.54%. That would get rid of the hated loop fixtures, of course. Third came the RFL to terminate its contract with IMG, back to IMG again. Almost 20% went for that one. Closely on its heels was the restoration of promotion and relegation between Super League and the Championship. I can well imagine that every Bradford Bulls fan probably voted for that one, and all the Championship fans, in fact. And then finally, bringing up the rear with just 14%, was a club to win the Super League title for the first time, which I'm sure Warrington, Hull KR, and a lot of other fans, other than Wigan, St Helens and Leeds fans, would probably have supported too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now, just another thing, in terms of individual players this year, who do you think needs to have a breakout season if you had to pick one player?
Well, we've already talked about Jake Connor, haven't we? One of the most talented players in rugby league, but one who was, it's fair to say, his achievements haven't matched his talent, put it that way, quite frequently. I think it's a great chance for him to really finally get on, show what he's capable of at Leeds. I think another player who's going to have an interesting year is young Leon Hayes at Warrington. He was going so well when he suffered that terrible injury after about 10 games or so earlier in last season. He's been given the number 7 shirt at Warrington, partnering George Williams after Josh Drinkwater's departure to Oldham. And I think it's going to be a really big year for him. I hope he's fully recovered from that that terrible injury, and that he has a great season. Another young man who I'll be keeping a close eye on is Morgan Gannon, the young forward from Leeds who's got the number 16 shirt in 2025. And the reason I'm quite keen to see him do well is that he missed the whole of 2023 with the after effects of concussion. And he's coming back from that. And I really keep my fingers crossed for Morgan that he doesn't suffer any more concussions this year and that he has a terrific season, because he's a tremendously talented player, and I'd really love to see him do well. And the other player I hope will do well is Michael Lewis at Hull KR, who will be wearing that iconic number 6 shirt that was worn by Roger Millwood after the club decided to bring that shirt. It had retired the shirt, but it's reversed that decision, and Michael Lewis will wear it in 2025. And I think that's a great thing. I was really supportive of that decision. And of course, you've then got another standoff half wearing number 6, Jake Truman for Wakefield. Now, Wakefield are coming up into Super League, having been in the Championship for a year. It's going to be a really big year for them to see whether they're competitive with the other teams in Super League. And if they are, it probably means that Jake Truman will have to have a good year. He won the Albert Goldthorpe Rookie of the Year award a few years ago, but his career so far is another one whose career has been dogged by injury. And I wish him all the best. I really do, for an injury-free year, so that he can have the chance to show just how good he can be.
I think for me, I'll name another player to that list in the NRL, Lewis Dodd.
Absolutely.
He needs to have a big year with CS. Needs to try and impress in those trials if he gets a crack.
Yeah. Well, I hope he does. I mean, Lewis Dodd sort of, faded out of the reckoning for England as 2024 went on, and that was a shame because he's a naturally very talented kid, and I certainly hope he does well. Matty Nicholson, of course, the ex-Warrington player who's gone to play for Canberra. Canberra seem to sign so many English players, don't they? And it's great to see them doing that, and I hope Matty Nicholson has a great year for them. I just hope, to every rugby league player, I just hope that they have an injury-free year. No, that's not possible, of course.
Yeah.
It's a game where injury is part of the game, but I hope we see fewer of them this year than we've done before, and particularly serious injuries.
The other player I was going to mention is there'll be a lot of eyes on Wanga Blake playing for Bradford.
Yeah, in the Championship.
Because some might say he was a little bit disappointing for St Helens.
I think
last
he was.
Season.
Yes, I don't think he was the player that they hoped he would be at St Helens, and that's why he's moved on to Bradford. And it was very disappointing. But another kid who I'm really looking forward to seeing, though, is Tristan Saylor at St Helens, because he's another one who's. I mean, there are some really interesting players who are going to be wearing number 6 shirts, aren't there, in 2025? And Tristan Saylor is another one who falls into that category. I think a very talented player who I think could do some great things for St Helens.
Yep. Yeah.
If it all works out for him, which
definitely.
I hope it does.
Well, he's got youth on his side. He's young,
Absolutely.
He's fit, he's fast. So, yeah, can't wait to see how he goes, mate. There's a lot of exciting things to look forward to this year.
Dead right.
Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up today, mate?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground there, Jake, and great to see you back. I'm hoping we'll have one or two guests with us in future weeks. And we'll see whether we, can secure one or two people. But it's great to see you in the new year.
You too,
Happy
mate.
New Year to you again.
You too.
And let's hope it's a great year for all of us.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. All right, well, we will wrap it up here and we'll do it again next week.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.